So today on Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, we're going to get back to working on our SEGA Super Stock small block Buick. I finally got the second head pretty much cleaned up and clearanced for shims on the rockers, and now we have to reassemble the cylinder head. I didn't do that in the previous video. I didn't show you how to springs and the whole 9 yards, so I figured I'd do a quick video on that, and then I can get the second head installed and we can get the engine about as far as I can get it without, some more work. So hang around and check out how this goes back together. So here we are back on our super stock Buick cylinder head. This would be the driver's side cylinder head. I've got it all cleaned up and painted, and I've already notched the rocker stands for clearance, and we're going to go ahead and start our reassembly on this. And I know that I skipped over it before, kind of just threw it together because I was excited I got parts finally. But now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this for everyone that missed out. So first things first that we got to do is I'm going to install these valve seals. And these heads have been cut for an odd valve seal for a Buick. It's more of a Chevrolet setup because it's got Chevrolet valves in it, and the guides they've been replaced by bronze guides. And so this is an 11/32 valve seal, which a Buick is normally 3/8, but then the diameter is well, a little bit over a ½ inch, so 0.531 is what the diameter of the stem, or what the diameter of the guide is here. So these are Howard's cams, valve seals, specifically for an application like this, which was probably more like a Chevrolet. But I noticed that they go on a little bit weird. They're not like your normal valve seal that goes on, that just slides right on and you just push it on like an umbrella type seal. These are like a press fit, right? So you can put them on there, and they only go on about maybe 1/8 of an inch, and then they get tight. Well, I looked at how you actually install these, and they're a little bit different than a regular valve seal, because the press fit here inside the valve seal allows it to stay in place here on this machine guide. So I had to look and see how to install them, and come to find out is LS head is very similar in these regards. So first thing I do normally is you put a little bit of oil on there to lubricate it. All right, once your oil is in place, you slide it down on the guide. And there's a couple of ways. You can probably just smack this sucker with a hammer or something, but I looked at it and it looks not very robust enough to take a hit from a hammer. So I decided just to press it on. And what I got here is a TA Performance valve spring uninstaller for like when it's in the engine. It normally would be mounted like so. It has a rocker, it's part of a rocker shaft. And then you would slide this over to where the valve spring is at and press it down to get the keepers out while the cylinder head's installed on the engine. Now, normally you would use this for like an engine that's got a big cam in it, and when you were going to break it in, you took the internal spring out. So what I'm going to use it for, though, is essentially just a press. Okay, I wanted to evenly press it on the head, or the valve seal onto the guide. So I came up with this this lever type setup here, just by flipping the valve spring compressor over, and you just install the bolts. You don't need to torque them down or anything. This isn't like Gonzo 900 foot-pounds that I'm going after. I'm just trying to press that valve seal into place, which really doesn't take much. So I'll show you how I did it here. All right, let me tighten this sucker down. All right, so you try to set it up with your valve seal. What I did here was take a 12 millimeter 12-point socket. Okay, you slide it down over the top. And then you just use this as a press. So you just kind of push down and it'll stop. You feel it hit the positive stop, so that means it's bottom out on the guide. And you didn't put any extraneous pressure on this thing that was uneven by whacking it with a hammer. So I'll go ahead and install the rest of them and you can see how that's done. Alright, so your valve seals are installed now. Now it's time to install the valves and springs themselves. So all of these valves have been labeled and they're in order and in accordance with this head. What I like to do is wipe the valve off really well. These heads have already been done and we're fresh and ready to go with the springs that were originally installed. But because of the clearance issues with the T&D rockers, so lube up your stem really good when you go to slide it in the valve or in the guide. That way it doesn't mar up the guide that much. So normally the valve spring installer, I just start slamming stuff together, but because these retainers are so much smaller, I'm gonna have to close this gap on the valve spring installer. So with that completed, I just grab one of your springs and retainer. Now, oh yeah, before I get ahead of myself here, oh no, this is it. All right, so we got our installer on there. The next thing to do is put the locks into place. Okay, and these are a 7-degree lock, which made for a small block Chevrolet. These are small block Chevrolet valves. The Buick is normally 10 or 11 degrees. This is a Comp Cam's assembly lube, but I just use a little bit of grease to hold these locks in place. Because they will like to slide out if you don't put something on them to hold them in place. And this assembly lube has no problems with it. Breaks down in the engine oil and gets caught in primarily the filter and stuff. So you just put a little bit of grease on it. Hold the keeper in there. Okay, and you want to make sure that the keeper's seated in the groove of the valve, but they'll pretty much stay there as long as you leave it there. Now you release the tension on the retainer and the spring, and voila, you have a spring captured into place. So that's essentially how I do it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble the rest of them. Now the only thing that's different about the intake valves is it does have that valve seal on it. The Buicks generally have the valve seals on just the intake. The early Buicks don't have any valve seals, but and they did smoke on startup sometimes. But they went to valve seals on just the intakes, like right after the nail head, I believe. So what you want to do is you want to get the stem lubed up pretty good, especially around the lock area for the keeper, because the valve seal does have like a little, we'll call it a squeegee inside there, that will grab this. The good thing is that it's somewhat tapered on the top, and then it'll slide down past this hard lock cut, which is a fairly sharp 90-degree angle, and then it's beveled back up, so it won't damage it generally going in. Coming out is a completely different story. Okay, your springs have been installed along with the keepers, retainers, and all the fun stuff. So here's the big to-do. All right. So when you put them together, I mean, these don't look too bad, but you can see like this here, this spring is not quite completely in the pocket, just like this one here is not quite completely in the pocket, and that's fine. It's easy to correct. Okay, so I just get a big screwdriver and just kind of, what you want to do is kind of just prime up into the pocket. You hear it click or pop, usually. Now it's in the pocket. All right. That one's pretty good. This one's way off. All right, now your springs are in the pocket. Now that your springs are on the pocket, what you want to do is look at each individual retainer and keeper. Make sure that the keepers are in there evenly, and because what can happen is when you relieve that valve spring compressor, the retainer can sometimes grab that keeper and push it off to the side, and then it's not lined up correctly, right? Like this one looks, I'd have to get my glasses. Oh, it looks like it could be even. So you just want to look at them all, make sure that they're even in there. I used to whack them with a hammer, not like a ball peen, but like a rubber mallet, to just kind of seat everything in there the way it's supposed to be seated. But the more I have done this, the more I realize it's not really necessary to do that. You just want to look at all the keepers and all the retainers in place, because when you cycle the engine over a couple of times, it will, if anything's out of alignment, it will knock it back into alignment. All right, well, that's it.